Mr. Chairman, and thank you. It was wonderful to visit with you right before the hearing, so thank you so very much for being here. In your report, you did talk about something that I want to shift gears a little bit, the possibility of a major biological attack, that in terms of the numbers killed and the psychological impact that it would have, that it would be so devastating. I chair the Emergency Preparedness Subcommittee, and we've had a couple of hearings on and actual briefings on the threat of a biological attack, and we believe that that is a very real possibility. We also know and heard from testimony from Dr. Bob Kadlec and Tom Inglesby that the threat is very real. We had a hearing on that, but the administration has eliminated the position of Special Assistant to the President and Senior Director for Biodefense Policy, a position that did exist in the Bush administration. And I'm wondering your thoughts on whether or not there is sufficient attention and focus on the possibility of a biological attack. Again, one of those types of attacks that I think the American people truly have no real understanding of. And are we doing, what should we be doing to better educate the public and even members of Congress and the country about what that means, what we should be doing, the importance of tools like BioWatch, and the importance of those investments? Anything, and particularly after we've seen what's happened in Syria with Assad, and now that we know we have so many Westerners, possibly, in Iraq and Syria, what kind of concern and attention should we be giving to biological?
Biological, deal with some of these things without scaring the American people to death is sometimes difficult. But we always said about biological, same thing we said about nuclear, really. We didn't think it was the most likely. But the results, if it was successful, would be so devastating that we had to do everything in our power on the preventative side, from educating the American people, which I don't think we're doing sufficiently in that area, to doing whatever we can do in government to prepare. Both, unfortunately, appear in two ways. One is to try and educate the American people to prevent it. The other is, God forbid it should ever happen. Are we prepared medically to deal with the after effects? And are we doing enough? Probably not, but it's a difficult subject to deal with the American people, I think, anyway.
A low probability, high consequence event very much worried us in our first report, and we remain concerned about it and very much appreciate, Congresswoman Brooks, that you are spending so much time on this, as are others, the Center for Biosecurity and others. We don't know, we did not have the resources to look into whether the executive branch is properly organized on this. We do know that there are a lot of people who are looking at it. It is my impression that on the resilience that Tom referred to, the preparedness for an event, we are in much better shape, and you could see that in part in how well organized the medical community was in Boston in the aftermath of the marathon bombing to respond. I think the medical community has actually made great strides. But what we're doing to prevent such an event, what our surveillance is of pathogens and the like, we just don't know, but it remains with us a very persistent worry.
The only other question I'd like to ask is what your observations are about, and again, this is what our committee is focused on, our interoperable communications issues. And with FirstNet standing up and finally getting started, any closing in my time I have remaining, any thoughts you'd like to talk about the level of interoperable communication success or lack thereof?
It was one of our biggest frustrations that recommendation took so long. People, as you know, died on 9/11 because policemen couldn't talk to firemen. People died in Katrina because people in helicopters couldn't talk to people in boats because these things were. And I know we've now got something finally in place, but I would suggest a function of this committee and the Congress is to monitor that very, very carefully and make sure it's being carried out, not just in certain regions, but all over the country, in a way that first responders, emergency management can talk to each other, because that saves lives, not just in terrorist attacks, but in hurricanes and floods and all sorts of other emergencies. So we haven't got the power to do it as citizens, but as a committee, I would ask you please to monitor that as carefully as possible and make sure it is done the way it's supposed to be done.
I would second that.
Well, thank you, and pleased to share we are having a hearing. Ranking Member Payne and I are having a hearing in early September after the recess on FirstNet and its progress and where we need to go. So thank you, and thanks for all you've done for the country.